Greetings to my dear guests on this video. I wish you a pleasant viewing and look forward to your feedback in the comments. Monday mornings at Eastbridge Solutions had a kind of rhythm to them, predictable, padded in routine. I'd arrive at 8:45 with a paper cup of coffee already sweating in my hand, slide past the reception desk with a half nod at Becky, and make it to my desk before the third chime of the office grandfather clock. It was a strange antique piece in an otherwise modern space, one that Mr. Hargrove, our founder and CEO, claimed reminded him of his father's law office. I always thought it reminded everyone else of how long we'd been waiting for raises. I'm Veronica. 29 years old, 3 years into my job as a client success manager, and still hoping someone would notice I'd been doing two people's work since Michelle left last fall. I worked in Pod C, sandwiched between accounting and marketing. My desk overlooked the tiny rooftop garden someone in HR tried to make employee-friendly, even though it was mostly a home for pigeons and half-dead succulents. That morning started like any other. Dull, routine, boring in a way that lulled you into thinking your job was secure. At 9:27, we all got the email. Subject: company-wide briefing. 10 a.m. vertical bar mandatory attendance. No explanation, no signature, just a link to a Zoom room and the unmistakable tension that comes when everyone opens the same vague memo at the same time. Emergency call? Melanie whispered from 2 desks over, lowering her voice like we were in a church pew instead of a sea of beige cubicles. Not sure, I murmured, watching others pull on their headphones with the slow reluctance of people bracing for layoffs. But what didn't make sense was that Mr. Hargrove never sent cryptic summons. He liked structure, agendas. The man once rescheduled a board meeting because the font on the invitation was too modern. So something was off. By 9:59, most of the office was logged in. Faces filled the grid on Zoom, familiar and bored-looking. But one square stood out. Black screen, name displayed in bold white letters. Charles Hargrove, no video. Just a brief flicker, then the sound of someone breathing in. A ragged, sharp breath that made the room around me go still. Then his voice, dry and cracked, filtered through the speakers. "Good morning, everyone. I won't keep you long." I sat up straighter. Others did too. "I want to be honest with you. Over the past few weeks, I've been dealing with some health challenges." His voice faltered on health, and I saw someone on screen, Dale from legal, I think, go pale. "I've been diagnosed with something serious. My doctors are optimistic, but recovery will take time, possibly months. Maybe longer." A pause. "So while I focus on getting well, I've asked my son Lucas to temporarily step into a supervisory role." My stomach dropped. Lucas Hargrove. He had visited the office exactly twice before. Both times he looked like he'd rather be on a yacht somewhere in Ibiza. All tailored suits, Bluetooth in his ear, and a smugness that clung to him like his cologne. "He'll be overseeing operations while I'm away," Mr. Hargrove continued, his voice weakening. "I trust him. He understands the importance of this company. I've raised him to respect what we've built together." My gaze flicked to the chat window. A message had popped up. Lucas Hargrove, looking forward to shaking things up. The smiley face did not help. Mr. Hargrove closed with a vague statement about teamwork and resilience, then signed off. The screen went black. And in that void, Lucas's face suddenly filled the frame, camera on, lighting perfect, as if he had prepped for a TED Talk. "All right," he clapped once, making several people jump. "Now that Dad's officially on medical leave, let's talk about the future. A real future, progressive, streamlined, lean." I felt my breath catch. He grinned. "Some of you won't like what's coming. That's okay. Not everyone makes it to the next version of a company, but I promise you, it'll be worth it." The meeting ended. I sat frozen at my desk, fingers still on the keyboard, coffee now cold. Something terrible had just begun, and none of us knew yet just how far it would go. It wasn't just the shock of the video call that silenced the office. It was who would be in charge. Lucas Hargrove. Even the air seemed to change after that Zoom meeting. You could feel the shift, like a cold front moving through a sunny day. Desks that had been bustling with quiet chatter turned solemn. Keyboard clicks slowed. People made eye contact less. It was like we were all waiting for a thunderclap. Because everyone knew Lucas. You didn't have to meet him twice to understand who he was. He was the kind of man who never let you finish a sentence if it didn't already confirm his opinion. He believed his ideas were revolutionary, when, in truth, they were usually plagiarized from the last self-help podcast he listened to at the gym. He was cunning in the worst way, not clever, just slippery. The kind of cunning that left your gut uneasy, but your emails technically clean. And he'd always wanted this. That was the worst part. This company wasn't just a business to Mr. Hargrove. It was a legacy. He built it from a rented one-room office on Main Street, back when client files were kept in locked cabinets and invoices were typed on carbon paper. He valued loyalty, structure, and actual results. If he promised you a promotion, you got one. If he said you were safe, you slept soundly that night. Lucas, though? Lucas had no patience for the slow burn of success. He opened a digital marketing startup fresh out of business school, something with a trendy name and a massive launch party. Within a year, it flopped. Then came a health supplement brand. It tanked after a public complaint about contaminated inventory. Then an app, a clothing line, a failed crypto platform. Every time he failed, he blamed the market, or lazy employees, or outdated investors. Never himself. He had been circling Eastbridge like a buzzard for years, waiting for his chance. Mr. Hargrove had always kept him at arm's length, clearly aware that his son had more ambition than judgment. But now, Mr. Hargrove was sick, and Lucas had slipped in through the front door. No title. No resume that warranted it. Just bloodline, bravado, and the kind of entitlement that doesn't walk. It struts. By the end of that day, his emails started flooding in. Subject: streamlining meetings. No more weekly syncs. Without my approval subject: all project plans. Must now use my template. No exceptions. Subject: KPI alignment will be reviewed personally by me. Schedule time with my assistant. I stared at the last one in disbelief. He'd scheduled back-to-back 10-minute slots for over 40 people, as if our entire workflow could be summarized in under a coffee break. "It's happening," Melanie whispered that afternoon. She looked like she'd aged 5 years since the meeting. "He's going to gut this place." I didn't respond, because she wasn't wrong. By Tuesday morning, Lucas had streamlined 3 departments, removed cross-departmental collaboration in favor of vertical autonomy, and appointed a man named Brett as his strategic enforcer. Brett used to run a failed co-working space and had a LinkedIn profile that included the phrase, "Vision-driven alpha." The kicker? Lucas moved into his father's glass office at the top floor. Didn't ask. Just walked in and changed the door plaque. By Wednesday, a quarter of our leadership team had mysteriously vanished from Slack. No explanation. Just gone. The worst part wasn't even the fear. It was the knowing. The knowing that we were being led not by a visionary, not even by a qualified professional, but by a man who saw people as chess pieces and the company as a sandbox for his ego. And the king of that sandbox had just seized the throne dot by Thursday. The energy in the office was like static before a lightning strike. People moved like they were walking on eggshells, trying not to make eye contact, not to breathe too loud, not to draw attention. I'd seen fear in corporate settings before: layoffs, mergers, department realignments. But this was different. This wasn't fear of loss. It was fear of transformation. The kind you couldn't predict, because the man holding the blueprint didn't care if the foundation cracked. Lucas had wasted no time stamping his presence on every corner of the office. By 9:15 that morning, he'd sent out a memo. Subject: Cultural Optimization Initiatives, effective immediately. That's what he called it, cultural optimization. In reality, it meant 3 things. Lunch breaks would now be limited to 30 minutes. The workday would be extended by 1 hour for strategic focus time. All major decisions had to be reviewed and approved directly by him or his proxy, Brett, of course. No discussion, no grace period, just a cold digital decree that landed in our inboxes like a gavel dropping. Melanie read it out loud in disbelief. "He seriously wants us to stay an hour later? Starting today?" "Strategic focus time," I repeated, deadpan. "Because we've been slacking off with all this productivity." A few desks over, I saw Leo from it just shake his head and close his laptop without a word. He didn't log off. He shut it down completely, like he was debating whether to come back after lunch, if lunch still counted. We weren't the only ones whispering. People huddled by the printer, near the kitchenette, by the stairs. Everyone spoke in lowered voices. The unspoken question threaded through every hushed conversation. How long is this going to last? And what happens if the boss doesn't come back? We all knew Mr. Hargrove was older, but no one expected this. His illness, his sudden disappearance from day-to-day life. And now, the company we knew, steady, imperfect, but respectful, was unraveling one Slack notification at a time. Lucas roamed the floors that day, like a substitute teacher drunk with power. "Hey, you, Veronica, right?" he said, catching me mid-email around noon. He didn't even wait for my response. "Your client response time is about 15% slower than the company average. Just letting you know that's not going to fly under my system." I blinked. "My clients are all on retainer. They prefer detailed answers to quick ones." He waved his hand like he was batting away a mosquito. "We'll talk about that. We need scalable responses. You'll get the new script tomorrow. Use it." A script. To talk to clients I'd spent years building trust with. I smiled politely. "Of course." Then I opened my messaging app and sent Melanie one word. Script. She replied instantly. "We're in hell." The real kicker came later that afternoon when Lucas summoned the entire team leads group for an informal town hall in the break room. He stood on the small step stool normally used to reach the top shelf of the snack cabinet and looked around like a general inspecting his troops. "We're going to be more efficient, more lean, more hungry," he said, pacing like he was giving a TED Talk. "I don't want to hear complaints. I want to see results. Starting Monday, we'll be reviewing weekly performance summaries, and I don't mean your manager's summary. I want you to track your own output, proactively. Don't wait to be told." There were blank stares, a few confused frowns. And then he said it. "Look, this isn't my dad's company anymore. I respect the man, but he built something traditional, safe. I'm here to shake that up. If you're not on board, you might not be here long." There was silence. Not the stunned kind, the knowing kind. And I couldn't help but think. Mr. Hargrove wasn't even cold in his metaphorical chair, and Lucas was already setting fire to his legacy. By Friday morning, the honeymoon was officially over. If Lucas had been strutting before, now he was practically marching. Armed with a leather folio he never opened and sunglasses he wore inside, he swept through the halls like he owned the place. Technically, he didn't. Not yet. But he was acting like the ink had already dried on a transfer of power none of us signed off on. That day, a few of us couldn't take it anymore. It started innocently enough. A quiet meeting request I sent to Team Leads Roundtable. 5 of us showed up. Melanie, Leo from IT, Nina from Ops, Jordan from Accounting, and me. We huddled in one of the side conference rooms, blinds drawn. "I know we're not supposed to question the system," I said, air quoting with more venom than I intended. "But this isn't just frustrating. It's dangerous. Lucas is making decisions without understanding how anything actually works here." Nina leaned forward. "My team hasn't been able to process approvals because everything now has to go through him or Brett. And Brett just keeps saying, 'We'll circle back.' It's a logjam." "He cut our software access by 40% without consulting us," Leo added. "Something about trimming costs. I told him we use all those platforms. He said, 'Adapt.'" Melanie shook her head. I asked if he'd run any of these changes by his father, and he literally laughed. Said, "He's too old for this game now." We all stared at each other, silent. That was the line. It wasn't just that Lucas was arrogant, or misguided, or power-hungry. It was that he had no respect for the man who built this company, the man we all respected, sometimes more than we like to admit. Charles Hargrove wasn't perfect, but he listened. He asked questions. He didn't bulldoze the people who worked for him. So we decided to speak up. It was stupid, in hindsight. Brave, maybe, but definitely stupid. At 2 p.m., we walked into the open conference area, where Lucas had set up a makeshift innovation lounge. It was really just a few beanbags and a whiteboard that said, "Disruption starts here." He looked up from his laptop, unsurprised, like he'd been expecting us. "Veronica, Melanie, Leo, what's this, a union meeting?" he joked. I forced a smile. "Just a conversation. We want to share some concerns." He leaned back, crossed his arms, smirking. "Hit me." "We're struggling to keep up with the changes," I said carefully. "Processes are bottlenecking, teams are confused, and frankly, morale is in the basement." Lucas scoffed. "Yeah, because people don't like being held accountable." Nina stepped in. "It's not about accountability. It's about sustainability. Your dad's systems worked for a reason. People knew what to expect. They were loyal. They cared." Lucas stood slowly, like a shark circling. You think loyalty keeps a business alive in this economy? You think routine beats innovation? Jordan, ever the quiet one, finally spoke up. We're asking if your father is aware of the changes being made in his absence. Lucas's face hardened. He looked at each of us like we were ants crawling on his desk. My father, he said coldly, isn't running things anymore, and he may not ever come back. He's old, outdated. He built a solid company, yeah, but that company is stagnant. I'm not here to preserve his museum. I'm here to make a real business, one that doesn't rely on people clinging to their comfort zones. I felt my jaw clench. Melanie's eyes widened, but she stayed quiet. Finally, I spoke. You don't get it, do you? I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You walk around here like you've built something, but you haven't. You've never had to earn the trust of a team. You've never had to keep a client from walking. You've never led anything that lasted more than 6 months. His smirk twitched. You think we're holding on to the past, but we're just trying to protect what still works. This company has survived because of people, not because someone ordered shorter lunches and longer days. Lucas took a step closer. You done? I nodded. He looked around at the rest of us. Anyone who doesn't want to be part of the new Eastbridge can leave, he said flatly. There are 100 resumes waiting to replace you. Fresh minds, hungry ones, not people stuck in the past. He left the room without another word. We stood there, still as statues. No one said it out loud, but we were all thinking the same thing. He didn't just lack leadership. He lacked Soldot. If Lucas was rattled by our confrontation, he didn't show it right away. No rage, no retaliation, just eerie silence. He disappeared into his father's glass-walled office and closed the blinds. For hours, we saw only a flicker of movement through the frosted corners. He didn't respond to emails, didn't answer Slack messages. The air in the office grew tense, electric. Something was coming. By 3:10 p.m. he emerged. His sleeves were rolled up, his tie gone, his expression icy. He walked past desks like he was inspecting troops, pausing occasionally to scan someone's screen, nod at someone too afraid to make eye contact. He was stewing, clearly, but calculating. And whatever was brewing inside him, it wasn't going to be a private conversation. I should have known then. At exactly 3:23 p.m., Lucas stood in the center of the open plan floor. No warning, no announcement, just power. Can I have everyone's attention? He called out, loud enough that the chatter died in waves. Heads turned, chairs spun. Silence swallowed the room. I stood slowly. Melanie was already watching him with wide eyes. Leo had his arms crossed. Everyone else, some new, some veterans, all anxious, just froze. Lucas didn't step up onto a chair or a table. He didn't need to. His voice sliced cleanly through the stillness. I've tried to be diplomatic, he began, pacing slowly. I've tried to work with what's here. But some of you are so deeply attached to outdated methods and broken thinking, it's holding the rest of us back. A few gasps. One loud swallow. I felt Melanie stiffen beside me. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, he continued. This company will not survive unless it adapts, evolves, streamlines. Then he turned directly toward me. And if that means cutting the dead weight to move forward, so be it. He lifted his chin. I am firing you, he said, locking eyes with me, and most of the other incompetent employees who are more loyal to my father's dusty traditions than to progress. The room erupted, not with noise, with tension. You could feel it snap like a rubber band pulled too far. Melanie gasped. Jordan just shook his head in disbelief. Nina let out a single word under her breath. What? But Lucas wasn't done. My father's vision is obsolete. He doesn't see the world as it is now. He wouldn't let me change things before, but he's not here anymore. And frankly, I don't think he's coming back. He said it like a challenge, like daring someone to argue, and maybe someone would have, if we weren't in shock. If half the office hadn't just been told their careers were over because a man with a podcast obsession and a grudge decided to cleanse the company in front of a live audience. I stepped forward, not angry, not trembling, just calm. You're making a mistake, I said, voice clear. Not just about me, about everything. Lucas scoffed. You wouldn't know progress if it slapped you in the face. And you wouldn't know leadership if it begged you for direction, I shot back. That did it. He turned on his heel, waving toward Brett, who had appeared by the door like a lurking shadow. "Make a list," Lucas barked. "We'll be issuing termination notices by end of day." Then he stormed off, just like that. No HR, no warning, no decency. A purge, not a restructuring. And for the first time since Lucas had stepped into his father's shoes, I wasn't just worried. I was furious. Not for myself. For this company. Because if Lucas thought that was the end of the story, he had no idea what was coming next. Lucas may have been loud, but he wasn't smart. That much became obvious the moment he tried to fire me in front of the entire office without checking a single detail in my file. Because here's what he didn't know. I wasn't just a client success manager anymore. I'd been quietly promoted last year. Senior liaison, corporate accounts. It didn't come with a big announcement or even a new desk, but it came with two things Lucas never considered: deeper access and legal clarity. I was privy to private client portfolios, back-end platform usage metrics, proprietary feedback systems, onboarding data. I was involved in everything from annual reviews to retention strategies for our highest-paying contracts. And unlike Lucas, I actually knew how to use that information. Most of all, I had documented it all. Not maliciously, not even intentionally, just the way anyone with a brain does when they're used to cleaning up messes others make. Backups, email chains, comparative growth files, notes from legacy clients, signed strategy memos with my initials in the margin. I hadn't even realized how much I had until I opened my secure drive that night. And best of all, according to the terms of my promotion, anything I developed independently, anything that wasn't classified under legal IP created by or for the company, belonged to me. That included the feedback model I built from scratch, the client journey roadmap that had boosted retention by 17%, even the visual pitch template I'd shared with the marketing team, uncredited of course. So while Lucas raged like a dictator at war with logic, I did the one thing no one expected. I packed my things, neatly. Melanie was right behind me, Leo too. Nina grabbed her bag in silent defiance, and Jordan simply said, "It's not worth watching the ship sink from the deck." We didn't storm out. There were no slammed doors, no shouting. We walked out with our heads high, knowing exactly what we were leaving behind and what they were losing. Because the people who kept the place running, the ones who held the true architecture of the company in their heads and their hard drives, were gone now. And Lucas? Lucas had no idea what was about to hit him. He thought he could gut the team and keep the engine running, but engines need operators. Systems need context. Clients need people they trust, not a smirking middleman with a Bluetooth earpiece and a half-baked vision. We stepped out into the sun, blinking at the sudden brightness. It felt poetic, honestly, walking away from the cold, sterile interior of a company that had once been built on integrity. "Think he even knows how many clients are going to panic when we're not there on Monday?" Melanie asked, slipping on her sunglasses. "No," I said, smiling faintly, "but he's going to find out." By the time we reached the sidewalk, I'd already opened my personal laptop. There were names in my inbox, clients I'd built relationships with over years of real work, people who trusted me, not a logo. I didn't need revenge. All I had to do was tell them I was available. Because in business, legacy doesn't belong to the one who shouts the loudest. It belongs to the one who remembers how to build, and who the clients remember when things go quiet. It had been 4 days since we walked out of Eastbridge. 4 long, eerie days. No news, no headlines, just rumors of clients calling in confusion, projects falling behind, and Lucas spinning stories about a necessary evolution. But on Friday morning, Melanie got a message from Mr. Hargrove's assistant. "He's feeling better. He's asking for you." We didn't hesitate. That afternoon, we drove to the rehab center tucked into the wooded hills just outside the city. Mr. Hargrove had insisted on keeping his condition quiet, which is why Lucas had been able to sweep in under the guise of caretaking. But seeing him now, pale but alert, seated upright in a soft chair by the window, I could tell he wasn't as weak as Lucas had made him out to be. He smiled faintly when we entered. "Veronica," he said, voice rough but steady, "you look like you've had a week." I laughed, but it caught in my throat. "We all have," I said. Melanie placed a small box of pastries on the table. "We brought your favorite, almond croissants." He chuckled. "You girls spoil me." Then his expression sobered as he looked at each of us. "But I'm guessing this isn't a social visit." We sat, and for the next 20 minutes we told him everything. We told him about the memos, the firings, the insults, about how Lucas had called his methods outdated and said he might not ever come back, about the public humiliation, about how we had tried to reason with him and been called disloyal, incompetent, obsolete. Mr. Hargrove didn't interrupt once, but his hands, folded on his lap, slowly tightened into fists. When I finished, there was silence. Then, "He fired you?" he asked, stunned. "You?" I nodded. Because I said the systems we built worked, because we didn't want to follow a vision that was all flash and no spine. Mr. Hargrove's jaw tensed. "And he said I might not come back?" "Yes," Melanie said softly. "He said you were too old for the modern business world, that your vision was dusty." His word. For a long time, Mr. Hargrove said nothing. Then he reached for the landline beside him and dialed a number from memory. He put the phone on speaker. It rang once, twice. Then Lucas answered. "Dad?" His voice was light, almost chipper. "You're up. That's great news." "Lucas," Mr. Hargrove said slowly, "I've just had a visit from some of my employees." There was a pause, a shift in tone. "Oh? What did they say?" "They said you've been restructuring the company. Just streamlining, cleaning house, adapting. You always said change was important. They said you fired Veronica, Melanie, half the senior team, that you told them I might not return." Another pause, this one longer. "Dad, that's not exactly how it happened. They said you mocked the systems we spent years building, that you stood in the middle of the office and called them incompetent." A nervous laugh came through the speaker. "Come on, they're exaggerating. You know how emotional some people can get when their comfort zones get shaken." Veronica exchanged a look with Melanie. Neither of them smiled. "They said you lied to them," Mr. Hargrove continued, voice sharpening, "and to me." There was no reply, just the sound of breath on the line. Finally, Lucas said, "You're tired, Dad. Maybe don't overthink this. Let me handle it. We've got momentum now." "Lucas," Mr. Hargrove cut in, calm but commanding. "I'll be back in the office on Monday." Another pause, this one different. Lucas's voice dropped. "I don't think that's necessary." Mr. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. "Oh, I do." And for the first time since his son had taken over, the voice of the real CEO returned. Firm, sharp, unshakable. "You and I are going to have a conversation. One you won't be leading." Then he hung up. The room was silent for a moment. Then he turned to us. "Get some rest this weekend," he said, his voice now steel. "Because on Monday, we're going to clean this up." By the time we left the rehab center, Mr. Hargrove was no longer the recovering CEO. He was a man with purpose, with fury even. The kind that doesn't explode, but simmers, controlled, strategic. As we drove back into the city, he asked us a question none of us expected. "Can you get me inside without anyone knowing?" I blinked. "You want to spy on your own company?" "I want to listen," he said, eyes clear now. "Because if my son really said and did all this, I need to hear it myself. Not through emails, not through lawyers. I want to see what kind of man he's become when he doesn't know I'm watching." And so we made a plan. By Monday morning, I walked into Eastbridge like I'd never left. Lucas thought I was gone. Let him. I still had my badge, and security hadn't updated the records. Typical oversight when you fire people on a whim. Melanie came in too, under the pretense of collecting personal items. Leo had already rerouted our meeting room access. And Mr. Hargrove? He waited in the old server closet on the third floor, near the West Wing boardroom, tucked behind the wiring panel and out of sight. He wore a hoodie and baseball cap like a college freshman. I'd rigged a wireless baby monitor under the boardroom table the night before. Cheap, reliable, and perfect for one thing: listening. At 10:12 a.m., Lucas strutted into the room with Brett and two new junior execs. They were laughing, loudly. "No, seriously, you should have seen her face. Like I just kicked her dog," Lucas said, probably referring to me. "She really thought I'd listen to her little speech about culture and legacy." Brett snorted. "Some of them still think you care what they built." Lucas scoffed. "Please. Half of them have been coasting off my dad's old systems for years. They can't see 5 inches past their own outdated processes. I've already lined up replacements. Fresh blood. People who don't talk back." And what if the old man comes back? One of the junior guys asked, a little too cautiously. Lucas laughed. He won't. Even if he does, I'll bury him in paperwork and strategy meetings until he gets tired. He's not cut out for this anymore. He's ancient. Half the time I talk to him, he forgets what I said 5 minutes ago. He should be grateful I'm giving this place a future. Silence. Brett spoke next. And the firings? Lucas shrugged. It's not about performance. It's about loyalty. If you're not with me, you're gone. End of story. I watched the monitor closely as the words filtered through to Mr. Hargrove's earpiece. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel the shift. Minutes later, I texted him. You heard enough? He replied with just 2 words. Far too much. At 11:20 a.m., he stepped out of the closet like a ghost emerging from the past, straightened his jacket, adjusted his cuffs, and walked into his own boardroom like he'd never left. Lucas looked up, mid-sentence. His smirk dropped. Dad? Mr. Hargrove didn't smile, didn't blink. I heard everything, Lucas, he said. The room froze. Brett paled. The junior execs suddenly found their shoes fascinating. And Lucas? He tried to laugh. Wait, you've been spying on... Mr. Hargrove cut him off. No, I've been watching you dismantle everything I built, lying to my staff, humiliating the people who made this company what it is. Lucas tried to stand his ground. I was modernizing, innovating. You were vandalizing, his father snapped. And you're done. Lucas opened his mouth to speak again, but the weight of the silence around him made it clear. No one was on his side anymore, not even the walls. And for the first time, he realized it. This wasn't his kingdom. Not yet. Not ever. The moment Mr. Hargrove said, You're done, the atmosphere in the boardroom went from arrogant to apocalyptic. Lucas stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, blinking like a man trying to process a language he didn't understand. For once, there were no smart remarks, no smug grin, just silence. Mr. Hargrove stepped forward, calm but crackling with authority. You know, he said, voice low, when you were a boy, I used to dream about the day I'd hand this company down to you. I thought it would be a legacy, a gift, but I see now that giving it to you would have been a curse. Dad, you don't understand. No, Mr. Hargrove snapped. You don't understand. You fired senior staff without due process. You misled clients. You used my illness to stage a hostile takeover and ran this place like a tech bro boot camp instead of a business built on trust. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Hargrove continued. Effective immediately. All your access privileges are revoked. Legal has been notified. You're no longer authorized to speak on behalf of this company. Your name will be removed from any decision-making boards, partnerships, and contracts. Lucas blinked. You're serious? I'm more serious than I've ever been in my life, Mr. Hargrove said, and you're going to repay every dollar you cost this company while I was recovering. Repay? We'll start with the 3 largest clients who terminated contracts during your modernization. Then we'll tally the damages from wrongful terminations. Oh, and the PR cleanup costs. Lucas's face flushed. You can't do this. I just did, his father replied. And with that, he turned to Brett. You, out. Brett didn't even protest. He simply stood and walked out, face pale, the fall from grace as swift as it had been smug. Mr. Hargrove turned back to us, Melanie, Leo, Nina, and me. I owe you all an apology, he said. You were loyal to the company even after it betrayed you, and you stood up when others stayed quiet. That means something. He looked directly at me. Veronica, I've reviewed your promotion record, the projects you managed, the relationships you protected, the systems you quietly improved. You didn't just survive this company, you held it together. I felt my throat tighten. I'd like to offer you a formal leadership role, head of strategic partnerships. You'll report directly to me. I blinked. You're serious? He smiled. Very. I accepted on the spot. Melanie was offered her old department head title, with a raise. Leo was given full control of IT architecture. Nina was invited to consult directly on operational policy. And those who had left with us? Mr. Hargrove promised to personally call each one of them to offer their jobs back, along with something this company had nearly forgotten how to give: respect. As for Lucas, he didn't storm out. He didn't cry or scream. He just walked away. Quietly. The kind of silence that happens when a man realizes his power was borrowed and the debt just came due. That evening, I stood in the empty lobby, watching the sun set through the tall windows. The company felt different now. Warmer. Braver. Better. Melanie came up beside me, her smile relaxed for the first time in weeks. "Never thought I'd say this," she whispered, "but I think we won." I nodded. Not just for us, for everyone who thought the loudest voice always wins. Because this wasn't just a story about being fired. It was a story about being seen, and that, more than anything, was worth fighting for.